What's going on, FA Nation? Welcome back. This is the Fantasy Alarm NASCAR DFS podcast. I am Dan Malin, and I am joined, as always, by our FSWA three-time NASCAR Writer of the Year. Sorry, Matt. I've done it so many times, I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3. But, not the greatest week for Charlotte. It's arguably the greatest race day of the year, the Sunday before Memorial Day. We got off to a really good start with F1.
Are we sure about that? There was a 40-minute red flag in corner 1 of lap 1.
But that first lap was very exciting for one of the arguably the most boring race of the year. But yes, the 40-minute red flag was kind of unfortunate. And then once things got rolling, it was your prototypical Monaco race. Very boring. It's so tough to pass there. Pretty much, if you just win the pole and run a clean race, you have it in the bag.
You would think so, but this is the first time that Charles Leclerc won from pole in 3 attempts. Right. So was that...
third time's a charm.
Yeah, but it was also the first time in the history of F1, I saw the stat, that the top 10 started and finished in the exact same spots.
Yeah, that's boring.
So
I get it's the first time that's ever happened, but God, that just screams
the problem is
boring race.
Yeah, the problem is clearly the cars. They're too long.
They're too big for that.
Graphic that 30 years ago, I guess, the cars are 2.5 feet longer than they were 30 years ago. So if you think about some of those really tight corners, there's also the chicane, which I understand why it's there because you don't want people flying out of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But yeah, something's got to be. I mean, I still think they need it. It's also really the only race of the year where qualifying is the absolute most important one. But yeah, and then we got Indy, which got delayed by 4 hours.
Yeah,
but they got the whole thing in. And
good for them.
Congrats to Joseph Newgarden for last lap pass, winning a second year in a row. By the way, also made news because he says he wants to do the double. He says he would like to do the Indy 500, obviously, Indy driver.
Honestly, that's kind of fun crossover because a lot of times you get it's the NASCAR guys that try to do the double, and so it's kind of cool to see an IndyCar guy saying that he wants to do it.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. He was talking about the differences that Larson pointed out between the cars, and apparently they're not that different anymore because the Cup car is a standard chassis, which is pretty similar to IndyCar chassis. So, and then we had the debacle in Charlotte where Larson actually made it on premises, looked to be changing into his Cup gear, including the putting the Hans device on,
yep,
and whatnot, and then for some reason they called the race,
which is unfortunate because all they had to do was wait an hour.
Yeah,
and the rain had stopped.
It had to have been Fox's decision because they raced past 1 a.m. last year.
Yeah,
the track was mostly dry when they called it, and I understand that Fox didn't want to get it kicked off the Fox channel to go to FS1, but you stick every other race on FS1. So why do you suddenly care about ratings now in a year where this is literally your last shot to broadcast it because Amazon's getting it next year?
Yeah.
So maybe they were a little salty because they got their race taken away. I don't know, but it was a debacle. What do you think NASCAR should do about the waiver for Larson?
See, I'm a little confused because I thought that he would be able to get a waiver no issue. It seems like in previous years, NASCAR has given those out like candy, and I get that there were more legitimate reasons to give them out. Chase had an injury.
Kyle Busch was injured. Bowman.
Yeah, he missed so much time with the broken leg and still came back to win.
Yeah, he missed 11, and then there was a year that Tony Stewart missed half a season with an injury and got the waiver, and then won 5 races in them. Jeff Gluck had a great tweet earlier on. We're recording this Friday evening. Jeff Gluck had a great tweet earlier on Friday morning, I believe, where he went back and searched Bob Pockrass's Twitter timeline to find out, other waivers and how long it took other guys to find out. And it was like most of them were the same day the waiver was filed, if not like the next day, because it was filed like on Sunday and then they gave it Monday. Larson's still waiting.
Yeah.
So I think
Because
they're like I get
there's
both
no
sides.
injury. Like he skipped a race.
He skipped a race. He
Yeah.
intentionally put his side project ahead of his day job. And I thought Joey Logano had a great clip on Twitter. People twisted his words, but basically his point was that if NASCAR gives the waiver for this, what's to stop Logano from saying, I want to vacate this week, man. I just don't want to go. Can I get a waiver? Like, and I get why the rule is there that you don't want a guy like SVG showing up last year, winning Chicago, and taking a playoff spot from a guy who's run 36 races. But I also get yes, Chase got a waiver for snowboarding. Okay. Bowman got a waiver for breaking his back in another series deal.
Yeah.
This isn't an injury. This is willfully choosing to not show up on time, knowing that you can't make it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What if Kyle Larson, even rain delay or not for the Indy 500, what if he had gotten hurt in the Indy race and then couldn't go to Charlotte?
I think you give him a waiver for that.
Okay.
But I'm also not saying he should now fake one to go get a waiver.
No, that's fair. Because I'm actually in agreement with Logano, and I can't believe I'm saying this and I like Kyle Larson. He's one of the nicest guys. Seems like one of the nicest guys in the Cup Series. He's a fan favorite for a reason. Very likable, phenomenal driver. But at the end of the day, the weather kind of screwed you, but you skipped a race for just so you could run the Indy 500.
Right. Also,
and I think NASCAR needs to draw the line, and they bend so many rules and they change the rules so many times. At least respect this one because he skipped a race.
Right. Also, this wasn't a one-time thing.
He wants to do it again.
2-year contract to do it. He's doing it again next year.
Yeah.
So it's not like this was his only shot, and if he didn't do it, he's not getting back in the car and he can't do the double.
Yeah.
Not to mention, even if he shows up to Charlotte, he's not getting the points for the Coke 600 because he didn't start the race. And I get the negative side of it. If you don't give him a waiver, then somebody's not going to go do it the next time, and then you don't get cross promotion from a star driver. But let's face it, are there any other guys that we can think of that are marketable enough, talented enough, skilled enough to pull off a double right now?
No, but do you think that maybe in future years NASCAR makes this the one exception that if you are trying to run the double on Memorial Day weekend and for whatever reason you miss the Coke 600, this is the exception?
The exception to the waiver rule?
Yeah.
I could see that.
Because it is great cross promotion for both, IndyCar and NASCAR.
I mean, it definitely is. Clearly, ratings were up for the Indy 500. People wanted to see how Larson was doing. He was doing great.
He was actually doing really well, yeah.
Till a speeding penalty took him out of contention late. But I do get NASCAR's point that, you are the leading Cup point getter. I get you're locked into the playoffs, but that also doesn't mean, you can win the Daytona 500 and then go, I don't want to go to the West Coast. So I'm locked into the playoffs. I'm just going to sit on my ass for 3 weeks. And I get that he races dirt cars literally every Tuesday in the summer, right where Cup Series has been. Last year, Cup raced at Kansas in May. 2 nights later, he was up at Eagle Raceway, which is 15 minutes from my house, with his high limit tour racing.
Yeah.
I get both sides, but I don't think you can give him a waiver for this. I really don't, because it's willfully choosing not to do your job.
Yeah. And the other thing is too is like he had a documentary crew following him around for the
Right.
double. And if you combine like the rain delay and then like it's great narrative storytelling because like there's the lengthy rain delay and obviously there's tension there because there's the will he or won't he make it to Charlotte. But then like he's running top 8, top 6 like at his best. But then he has the speeding penalty, which kind of just takes all the wind out of his sails, and like obviously that screws him from, the finish he could have had, and then like he just fails to make it to Charlotte in time, and now we're looking at a potential, uh, the possibility that he doesn't get the waiver. Like this documentary might just be like the saddest thing to watch.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think NASCAR is going to give him the waiver
Yeah, because they
because
bend rules
it's
for their
so much
superstars.
worse for them to not give him the waiver, and then a guy who's won multiple times already this year isn't in the playoff. Your number one draw isn't in the playoffs.
Dems
I
the
think
rules.
I think they're trying to make him sweat it out a little bit.
Mm.
But other big news:
Yeah.
SHR will cease to exist, like the Pac-12 at the end of the season.
Shocking. Well, I guess it's not shocking because it's kind of been.
It's been a lot of rumor and a lot of smoke.
But how do you feel if you're a guy like Noah Gragson who signed with SHR in the offseason and you thought like this is my new home, this is an opportunity, it's a shot at redemption, and once again, and he probably finds a job. He's had a really good year for SHR and he has sponsorship, he has like backing, but it's just like
Or
you thought
Josh
this would
Berry, who gave up a full-time
bingo,
gig at the top Xfinity team to go to replace a Hall of Fame driver,
yeah.
and he gets 36 races in the Cup Series, and now he's got to go find a new team. Look, and then there's all the behind-the-scenes folks that can't just get absorbed into. I mean, some
Another
of
team,
them
yeah.
will, but not all. Not all. I think I heard the figure was like 300 people.
Yeah.
Not all of those people are going to get absorbed into the other teams that are buying charters. Also, Front Row is buying a charter, yet Michael McDowell left to go to a different team. Like, this is weird. Like, it's going to be a very weird and very loaded silly season.
I think McDowell's mostly just buying into that partnership that Spire and Trackhouse have. Spire seems to be very aggressively investing more in developing a pipeline because they do have the Truck Series team, which has had a decent amount of success this year. I think they have 3 wins among their team. They have the alliance with Rev Racing and Nick Sanchez, and he has 2 more wins. So, like, Spire's kind of on the up and up. It seems weird to say, but they're making good moves. And we are 13 minutes into this podcast. We haven't even started talking Gateway.
That's true, which is fine.
Not my favorite race to preview.
Not our favorite race. But yeah, so far Front Row has been accounted for as buying a charter. I believe 2311 is another team that's been basically.
I heard that there's going to be I heard like if you're a 4-car team right now, you kind of get grandfathered in, but NASCAR wants to cap teams at 3-car teams.
That's pretty. I mean, but how many 4-car teams? There's 2 4-car teams left.
Yeah, there's 2. There's JGR and Hendrick, but I think
and you're not gonna take away the 2 most successful teams.
Yeah.
I
can't remember where I heard it. Maybe that was like an opinion of Denny Hamlin's that I heard, but it just kind of struck me as a little odd. But I also think that in this day and age, I don't know why you would go to a 4-car team. It seems like 3 is probably the most efficient.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, hell, look at the 2-car teams that are outpacing the 3-car teams. I mean, RFK is. I thought that was
basically the class of the Fords right now.
Yeah, and they're outpacing Penske, a 3-car Ford team, and then the 4-car Ford team just announced that they're folding at the end of the year. So, there's that. So, I'm hoping that all of those guys find jobs. I'm not sure all of them will. But if you're Penske, do you kick Cindric to the curb for one of the 4 SHR guys?
Doesn't it seem like the writing is on the wall for that potentially just because of the issue that Penske ran into with IndyCar a few weeks ago and Tim Cindric and all that?
I would think so. And Cindric, I mean, Austin Cindric is a skilled enough open wheel guy that he could go get a job in whatever open wheel series he basically wants to.
What if he becomes like Penske's version of Cole Custer? You know, Custer had the Cup Series ride for a couple seasons. Then they kicked him back down to Xfinity Series, wins the Xfinity Series championship. You know, what if they just do that with Cindric? Cindric was awesome in the Xfinity Series. Can't really say the same about the Cup Series aside from it, you know, when he won the Daytona 500. Great race to win, but you haven't done anything since.
Right. It's entirely possible. Look, if I was Penske, I would certainly look at doing that because right now, I would rather have 3 of the 4 SHR guys ahead of Cindric?
Priest being the odd man out.
Yeah, I mean, Priest is basically Austin Cindric.
Yeah, if you put Ryan Priest in a truck at Nashville.
Briscoe, Gregson, and Barry are all, I think, unquestionably better than Austin Cindric right now.
I would say I'd probably feel better about investing in them just to see what they could do. I would definitely rather have
I'd
Gregson.
probably take Gregson because he's younger and has higher upside.
He and a ton of funding.
Yes.
Like that Bass Pro Shops sponsorship goes a long way. Plus he has Wendy's and a couple other big name companies.
Right. So I don't know. We'll see. But yes, we are 16 minutes in. Let's turn our attention to Gateway. Fun fact, I drove past several NASCAR haulers as I texted you on Thursday night. I was driving back from vacation.
I was dead asleep, man.
Yeah. I was driving back from vacation, not sleeping, and driving through Tennessee and took the same route that NASCAR haulers would take to go from Charlotte to East St. Louis. I saw a couple of Legacy Motor Club trailers. I think I saw a truck trailer too. So that was kind of cool. But actual track breakdown. So Gateway, as those of you who follow Dan's truck stuff, it's been on the Truck Series schedule for a while. It's been a long-standing scheduled date. Cup Series went there as soon as they brought the next gen car, and it's been okay.
It's just been fine. It hasn't been anything spectacular.
I mean,
if the crowd shows up, it can stay on the schedule. But as far as the racing goes, whatever. It's forgettable.
Yeah, for the most part. It's a 1.25 mile short, we want to call it a short track, I guess. It's 1.25 miles. It's a little longer than New Hampshire. However, it is kind of a weird shape. One end is tighter than the other one. But
it's like Darlington, but flatter.
Because it's also really flat.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of a unique setup if we want to talk about similar tracks, sort of. We can look at Richmond, New Hampshire, Phoenix a little bit. But there's basically no tire wear.
Yeah.
Passing's pretty tough.
Yep.
As I was writing the betting piece today, looking back at the 2 races for the Cup Series, 70% of the top 10 finishers across both races have started inside the top 12.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say, and what's kind of been the saving grace for the first 2 races is that we had 10 cautions in the first race and 11 in the second. And so if this is a 240 lap race, and you can get enough cautions, that will shake up the field. And you almost need it. Because that's really the only way drivers can either, move up, get off the conventional pit strategy, make a bold move, because passing is so tough here that you need to rely on cautions to help you. As long as you're not in the caution. But yeah.
Yeah, but there's another part with these cautions, though, that's interesting, because for the first time on a short track, we don't necessarily need to focus on long run speed. We can focus on medium run speed at practice. Because if you do the math, so there's 10 cautions, right? 2 of those are stage cautions,
Yeah.
which means there's 8 incidents cautions in one and 9 in the other. Part of that was due to like tires popping and falling, but some of it is due because guys just get loose, try to pass, and it doesn't go well. So if you do the math, it's anywhere between like 22 to 24 laps per caution on average. So that's not like in terms of long run speed on a short track, we're usually talking 50 plus laps, right? If it takes your car 10 or 15 laps to get going, you are toast at this track because based on the amount of cautions, just by the time you start getting going, it's going to go yellow again. So you're never really going to get the car going. So that's kind of an interesting thing we can focus on this week is more so like the guys who really have good 10 to 15 lap averages. Obviously 20 is solid too, but
This could all be a moot point if practice and qualifying is rained out.
that's true. That's true.
And then you're just hoping you're nailing the guys that roll off the truck fast.
Exactly. So,
Okay. So from a bankroll management perspective, would you scale back how much you play if we don't get practice and qualifying in? Because this is not.
yes.
I'm going to watch the race. I'll probably. I hope I enjoy it. It's just not very exciting.
Yeah. So to touch on the weather here, NASCAR's in town, which means rain's in the forecast. Just how we're rolling right now. Practice and qualifying for Cup is at like, I don't know, 9:30 in the morning tomorrow on Saturday morning.
Like cooler track conditions when the race is going to be hot.
Right, because the race isn't going to be till the afternoon on Sunday when it's going to be totally different temp. The sun's going to be out. Excellent planning by NASCAR. So if they have practice and qualifying, I don't know how much you can really count on practice and qualifying numbers. The problem is that there is at least a 60% chance of rain starting at midnight tonight for East St. Louis. And it goes all the way until 5 or 6 o'clock, and then it drops down to a minuscule chance of rain.
Yeah.
So the Truck Series race may be affected there. Practice and qualifying may just be blown off, and then we just get how guys did. So the metric takes into account how guys did in their last race, which means we may get Larson back.
God.
To bring it back full circle to what we started talking about. Larson may start in the back.
Like the other thing is that race ended halfway, so it's like you have guys just on different strategies. Like you probably have guys that are in the top 15 that have no business belonging there.
Correct.
That's horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's gonna be a cluster. So to answer your question, yes, if we don't get practice or qualifying, I'm doing a light bankroll for this one because it goes back to like 2020 where they showed up, rolled off, and who knows what the hell you have in your car. We'll still have a playbook out. I'll still base stuff off of how guys have done here in similar tracks and whatnot. But yeah, it's gonna get dicey if we don't have practice and qualifying for sure. It doesn't look great for that right now. So unless the forecast changes in the next 12 hours,
yeah,
looks unlikely. So with that though, let's go ahead and we will get into a little bit of the field here in just a second. I gotta
share screen.
Share my screen, which wasn't previously working. So we are gonna do this and attempt to make this work, and hopefully, hey, look at that! Look at that! So we've got the 6 guys at 10K or above this week, and there's some interesting ones. There's also some value I can find in this range.
In the 10K range?
Yes.
Bell?
I think Bell is a value. I do think Truex being the 4th highest priced one is a value because he's been elite at similar type tracks.
Yeah, and honestly, the track history here in the 2 races that they've done hasn't been awful. Like he's got 42 laps led. I mean, granted, those all came 2 years ago, but honestly, he's been fairly consistent. He started P13 in 2022 and finished sixth. That's where he led 42 laps. Started fifth, finished fifth last year, just no laps led. And this is going to be a track where you want to get laps led. At his price tag, you can't just start and finish fifth and think that you're going to be optimal.
Correct. Like we're going to need either PD or we're going to need laps led. But
Right.
the thing with Truex is if you look at, so if you go back to the start of 2022, which is when the next gen car came in, right? And you look at Phoenix, New Hampshire, Richmond, and Gateway. There's 12 races at those tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Truex has 9 top 7 finishes at those tracks, including a couple of wins. He's got the best driver rating in the field at that 12 race sample. Only Denny Hamlin is up there over 100. So there's that. But if you're looking at Hamlin, who has a pretty similar history at these tracks, I may as well just save the $700 and go with Truex.
It's not a bad argument, I'll give you that.
And then Bell has been a threat in these races, in these shorter, flatter track races.
Fresh off that amazing Coke 600 win.
Yeah. I mean, he did technically run basically as many laps in that race as he's going to in this one.
True. Yeah. Good argument.
249 laps. Blaney is interesting to see him this high.
See, I think that's mostly, and I was going to mention this when we get to Logano and Busch. I think it's a track history thing because he's finished 4th and 6th here. He led 83 laps here last year. He led 12 the year before. And his driver rating is like, I think an average between the 2 races is like almost 120, which is very good. So I think he's just getting juiced a little bit based on what he's done in 2 races here.
But I'd also save the 1,500 and go with Logano. I would play Logano over Blaney. I also wrote up Logano as a bet to win.
He's been very, very fantastic here. I'll give you that.
I mean, he won the first one because it's in that run of anytime there's a first for anything, count Logano in.
Yeah.
This clearly doesn't count as that. But
do we have any more of those on the schedule this year? I mean, it's not a first, but
been repaved because you won the repaved North Wilkesboro.
It's not a repave, but aren't they going from Indy Road back to the Oval?
They are. We haven't run that. This is the first time on the Indy Oval in the next gen car.
So there you go. He's going to win the Brickyard. Lock it in.
Okay. Well, you've got Dan's top playbook play for that weekend because I'll be in Chicago. But yeah, so I would take the savings and play Logano over Blaney. I think he's more consistent at this style of race in the next gen car. He does have the win here, although Blaney's run pretty well here in his own right. I just don't. Blaney's been so up and down this year. Like the whole Ford camp, aside from RFK, have been up and down this year. But I feel like Logano has been kind of building a consistency that's coming in the shorter, flatter tracks.
Which is odd because I just don't think of him that way. But he was good at Richmond.
He was good at Richmond. He wrecked out at Phoenix, so it obviously doesn't look great. But he was very good at Richmond. He finished P2 at Richmond after starting 10th, which is a track where it's really quite hard to pass, typically speaking. Did win the All-Star race, which again, not a direct comparison, but it is a short track, like really short track. And it's also tilted because it goes up and downhill. But That's my thought there. Obviously, Cindric is out of play. But what are we doing? Like, I don't know what to do with Byron or Reddick or Chase or Kyle Busch.
Yeah, Bush is going to be very difficult because the track history, very small sample size in the 2 races. But last year he won the pole and he won the race with a lot of dominator points.
Yeah, he got like 121 laps led, but somewhere in the middle he gave up the lead and then got it back.
And then even the year before, when Logano won, Bush still led 66 laps and had 46 fastest laps. So something is clicking at this track, but also this year he's just been dreadful.
I mean, he literally told Ricky Stenhouse, "I suck as bad as you, so let's just go at it."
Yeah, very tough read, and especially without qualifying. I'm hoping that most people just roster him based on what he's done the last 2 years, and then he becomes the easiest fade.
Yeah.
But I would try to spend the knowing you based on what you just said, you'd rather spend the extra 500 for Logano. I'd even be more comfortable just spending the extra 200 for Elliott, as I think most people would, or just saving 200 and going to Bush or not Bush, but Gibbs or Bush or maybe even Chastain, who also is pretty decent at this track.
Yeah, I Busher.
It's unfortunate, but with Bush, it just seems like right now, the way things are trending, there are just better plays around him.
I would agree. He's kind of in this weird spot where he's not the definitive best play in this range, so you kind of just say, we'll sprinkle him in somewhere and we'll sprinkle some other guys in. I would, speaking of the RFK duo, I would also save the 1,000 and go with Busher. Depending on if practice qualifying rained out, whatnot. Kez has been great, so is Busher, and at some point, Busher's luck is going to turn.
Oh, absolutely. Could have arguably. I mean, if they run a full 400 lap race last week, I don't see how top 10 felt pretty good, but like I honestly felt like Busher had a top 5 in him last week.
Right. And he's just been so consistent in this shorter, flatter track deal for like 2 years now that at some point it's just gonna click, and we're gonna. I mean, he got a second at Phoenix, he got a 9th at Richmond. He's posted like 4 top 10s in the last 5 of these style races.
And like, let's not forget, like, just the way he's running currently. Third in the All-Star race, he was contending for the win at Darlington, but then he was wrecked. Kansas, he finished second. So the comparable tracks
in the closest finish in the history of NASCAR.
So the luck or the fortune, whatever, it eventually takes a turn and it'll work out in his favor. So he's only 8,500, but it's like just the eyeball test is there that there's this play in the mid range that has a lot of win equity that we're seeing just on a variety of tracks over the last month. And so he is very difficult to pass up right now.
Yeah, I agree. If he had a win, he would be up in the Reddick Keselowski range. There's no reason he would be $1,000 cheaper than Keselowski.
Yeah.
I mean, Kez has run. Don't get us wrong. Like, Kez has run well in this style. He's got multiple top 5s in a row in this style of race. Obviously, coming off a win at Darlington to end that 100+ winless streak he had going. But now things get interesting. Once you get past Chastain, which I agree with you, I think there's reasons to play him. He's kind of one of those guys who can just show up with speed 1 week kind of out of the blue at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, we also kind of compared Gateway loosely to Phoenix, and he won Phoenix last year.
Correct.
Gateway isn't all that far off in terms of distance and kind of being its own unique track. Like Nashville it's a tri-oval, but it's also 1 1/3 miles, whereas this is just 1 1/4 mile, completely different shape, but still relatively flat. And I feel like this is the kind of track where he should be better.
Correct.
And yeah, and he kind of comes out of nowhere and like wins races when you least expect it to.
Correct. This feels like this could be teed up for one of those weeks. But then things get weird, I feel like, after Chastain,
Yeah.
because I don't know what's wrong with Bowman other than he's in the fourth car at Hendrick, and it's the fourth car by a mile.
And he hasn't even been bad.
No, it's
Like he didn't get to run the All-Star race, but still, like he's got in the last 5 points-paying races, all top 10 finishes.
all top tens.
Yeah.
Like it's the sneakiest stretch of top tens for a guy we keep liking to poop on. But again, like these finishes don't really get. He's 8K, so you need at least a 40-point day for 5x, right? And obviously, the All Star race doesn't have that many laps. But like a 35, if he shows up and does at the Coke 600 what he does at Gateway what he did in the Coke 600, which was shortened to 249 laps, that doesn't pay value. Like if he starts well and finishes well and gets a handful of fastest laps, that's not enough value. But the problem is this is a track where it's really hard to pass.
Yeah.
And so like if he shows up like Richmond and qualifies well but gets somehow passed 13 times on a track where it's hard to pass, or has a Phoenix, which is his own home track, there's just a decent amount of risk here for a guy who's mid-tier. I think the SHR trio of Graxon and Briscoe and Barry could be pretty interesting.
Oh, they're all priced back to back to back.
Yeah. I like Barry the most.
I have been off him for the most part, but I actually do agree with you this week. I think he would be my preferred play. Just it's an easy price tag for him to pay off, and of late he has been doing that with ease. Now, granted, he started pretty far back in a lot of races,
Correct.
but there is seemingly. It just seems like this. He should be in the top 15 every week, but there's also the ceiling of him sneaking away with like a top 5.
Right. And this is a style of track that fits him. Like he is a short tracker.
Yeah.
Right. And now he's got to go improve himself for a job for next year. So does, I think Graxon and Briscoe kind of have a little less to prove in the Cup Series.
Yeah.
Than Barry. And in the 4 similar races that he's run in the Cup Series, because again, not been a full-time Cup guy all that long, Barry has 4 similar races. He's got 3 top 11 finishes in those 4 races. So that's intriguing to me in that regard. And then it gets really weird. And kind of down to the same dudes we usually are, I feel like.
Yeah, and I really tried to when I was doing my Fantrax preview article for this race. I tried to get a little different. I do like Justin Haley, if I'm being honest.
I could see that.
I think he's finished 16th and 14th in the 2 races that they've done here. And that was with Colleague. And the assumption heading into this year was that this was
a stupid move to go to a worse team.
Yeah, but actually, because they have Rick Ware has an affiliation with RFK, right?
I believe so.
And that's arguably the best alliance you could have as a Ford driver right now. And so, I'm not saying Haley's a slam dunk, but I was very heavy on him for the Coke 600, and I honestly thought he had a top 15 car. It just kind of sucks that he finished 22nd, but he was top 20 at Kansas. He was 9th at Darlington. Like this kid can just come through and I don't even need him to come away with a huge top 10 finish. It'd be nice. Don't get me wrong. But, at Bristol, he finished 17th. Coda finished 17th. Just give me a top 20 with some PD, and I would gladly take that at the $5,700 price tag. Because I also feel like he still comes in as a slight leverage play almost every week.
I would agree. I think people, don't pay him any attention. You're waiting for another plate race, and then they're going to load up on Justin Haley.
He's more expensive than John Hunter Nemechek, which blows my mind.
I mean, but for good reason, to be honest. He's outscored him by an average of 5 points a race.
Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, they have the same number of top tens, but Haley's been way more consistent. You know, I agree with you on basically all of that. Haley, look, if you're going to get a leverage play in this range with reasonably good equipment and a guy who can churn out almost 30 points a race on average, it's hard to say no to that.
I think Carson Hocevar is a good play too, considering this is I'm not. I know Hocevar is not like a seasoned veteran of the Truck Series, but this is also a track where the Truck Series has routinely run here for the longest time. And it's not like we haven't seen Hocevar go out and get 30, 35, maybe 40 fantasy points. Like he's done it a couple times this year. So for that reason, I think I could just talk myself onto Hocevar and Haley as two of my favorite value plays. And I don't think too many people play them each week.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't need anything spectacular from them. You just need them not to kill you in order to get, another higher priced guy. We kind of glossed over, circling back to the top because I was about to build a lineup and I realized we kind of glossed over Larson.
Did we though? I mean,
we talked about the waiver, but are we playing him at 11,000?
I mean, probably.
I feel like he's been consistent in these tracks, but I don't know that he's been dominating at these tracks.
If we don't get practice in qualifying and there's the likelihood that he starts deep in the field, I might fade him just because if I'm paying this price tag, I do want dominator points from these 10K drivers.
Or an absolute bejesus amount of PD, which you can get. We saw AJ Allmendinger move up from 35th to 10th here in the first Cup race. But without a lot of luck and caution strategy and, whatnot, you could get lapped because, again, it's a 1.25 mile track. So if somebody has nailed the setup,
the 5 team would have to be setting this car up blindfolded for them to get lapped on this track.
Well, they're not going to get lapped, but I'm just
they won't.
But yeah, so if we're looking at some of the guys we've mentioned, like the Truex, and then go with Logano. I'm just trying to see who, and Buescher at 8,500. See what's left. That's 7,200 basically on average. We kind of like Chastain, Barry. Now we're gonna have to get real. Oh, look at that, 6,300. Not so bad. Go with Justin Haley. You go to Hocevar. Yeah, let's go with Haley. I quite like this.
I think a good measuring stick for Haley is even if he isn't necessarily great in practice, if the RFK cars are still good, right. I think you can still find a little comfort in playing Haley just because they have that alliance. They can make in-race adjustments. I think Haley has made some unapproved adjustments this year as well and just dropped to the rear, which is fine because he typically starts there. Right. But yeah, even if Haley doesn't look great in practice and qualifying, but the RFK cars are good, I still think you can play Haley with a little confidence.
Yeah, I agree. This is the all consistency lineup, by the way.
Let's see. Nice.
So there's that. We're probably gonna get a little. You're probably gonna have to get a little funky in some of your lineup because I have a feeling that there's gonna be several dudes who might be very popular to play this week. And there's just going to be one guy who shows up that nobody saw coming and runs quite well.
Do you think this is a revenge race for Corey LaJoy? remember last year, this was the race that he got to drive the 9 car, and we were all really excited to see Corey LaJoy in the 9 car, but then we're all just like, why does it have to be Gateway?
That's true. That's true. Is this also the track where Hamlin and Chastain feuded and Hamlin was running Chastain down to like the apron?
I think this is one of them.
Yeah, that's true. They got into like 17 last year. But I think this was the track where NASCAR was like, okay, I think you made your point. And he goes, have I though? Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what shakes out with practice and qualifying again. Your truck and Xfinity write-ups are already or just about up on the site.
The Xfinity write-up is live. It'll be updated once we know the starting order on Saturday. That's a road course race out in Portland, so we are pretty much just
with
looking
odd
at
pit rules.
Yeah, because they have skeleton crews, because the full-time pit crews are at Gateway, obviously.
Right.
The truck playbook, we know the starting order. They have practice and qualifying Friday late afternoon. It's edited. It's saved as a draft. Pretty much after we jump off this, I'm going to go publish that. So basically, it's going to be live before you guys even watch this.
And then Cup playbook will be out Saturday. Obviously, wait to see if they decide to get practice and qualifying in. Then I'll wait it out.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine. I don't know when they would do it. if the forecast holds, I don't know when they would do it. So we'll see. But we may get a harken back to 2020 where you just show up and race what you got and have some fun, I guess, on a track where you can't pass.
Well, Matt, as always, thank you so much for your time. We'll be on the lookout for your best bets and your playbook. And best of luck to you this weekend, and best of luck to the FA Nation.
Best of luck, FA Nation.